Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the Natural Resource Commission's public hearing on proposed plastic bag regulations. My name is Stephen Murphy. I am chair of the NRC, and what I'd like to do right now is to have our members introduce themselves to you. Lisa?
Lisa Alney.
Raina McManus.
Heidi Gross.
Joan Gahn.
What we're going to do here is the Vice Chair, Lisa Olney, and I think Raina McManus as well, will make a presentation of what they have found and what we're considering. And then I think after that, we will open it up to public comment and questions and take it from there. If you really are interested, after the public hearing, we're going to have our regular NRC meeting, so you could even stick around for that. So at this juncture, I will pass the microphone over to Lisa. Thank you.
So thank you for joining us this evening to discuss an NRC proposal to help address the problem of plastic litter on NRC land and throughout Wellesley. The NRC has been considering this issue for several years, and after much thought and careful study, we will be asking town meeting members to vote on a proposed bylaw to restrict the distribution of disposable plastic checkout bags at annual town meeting, which starts on March 28th. This evening, we'd like to explain how we came to this decision and why we think this issue is so important for the town and for our planet. I'd like to start with a quick story. Not long after Raina McManus and I were elected to the NRC in 2014, we both volunteered for several cleanup projects in Wellesley parks and along the Charles River. Those of you who have participated in these cleanups have had firsthand experience with the bagfuls of plastic litter that we find in the parks. On one such project in the woods near Morse's Pond, I picked up a plastic bag peeking out from under the leaves. As I pulled it up, the leaves fell away, and we realized that there were more bags flattened on the soil. Brushing away more and more leaves, we discovered that the entire floor of the woods in that area was completely lined with plastic bags. It looked like someone had deliberately laid bags out under the trees. For me, that was the moment when the problem of plastics in Wellesley, and plastic bags in particular, became all too clear. Of course, the problem extends way beyond Wellesley, as much of our plastic litter makes its way into the Charles River and out into the ocean. We'd like to show you a brief video that provides a good overview of what's happening on a global scale.
It is everywhere. We need it. We want it. We even find it in places where we wouldn't expect it. When researchers examined the stomach of a beached sperm whale in 2012, they found 30 square meters of tarpaulin, a 4.5 meter long hose, a 9 meter long plastic rope, and 2 flower pots. How is this possible? On average, a European uses and disposes of more than 100 kilograms of plastic per year. A large part of plastic waste ends up on huge landfills or in the sea. Today, more than 100 million tons of plastic is drifting around the oceans. Due to particular currents in the Pacific Ocean, a new continent has been born. A mass of plastic waste the size of Europe. In some areas of the oceans, there is up to 60 times as much plastic as there is plankton. Because plastic does not rot, it lasts up to 500 years. Through exposure to sun, wind, and water, plastic is broken down into microscopic parts. These plastic particles can absorb high concentrations of agricultural and industrial toxins. Many animals mistake the plastic for plankton and eat their fill. Every year, more than 100,000 turtles, marine mammals, and seabirds die a slow and painful death because they starve with a full stomach or because their intestines rupture. Other marine creatures in whose cells plastic and toxins have accumulated end up as seafood on our plates. The smallest form of plastic are microplastics. They are added to cosmetics, shower gels and toothpastes. A tube of toothpaste contains up to 10% microplastics. But sewage plants cannot filter microplastics, so they too end up in the sea. In the making of plastic, hazardous chemicals are used in order to enhance elasticity of fire resistance. Bisphenol A, plasticizers or flame retardants are contained in almost every plastic product. Through exposure to heat, the wrong detergents or simply over time, plastic will go brittle, thus releasing these chemicals, which in turn, through the airways, ingestion or through mere touch, find their way into the human body. The consequences are severe. They include increased risk of cancer, asthma, infertility, and developmental disorders. The plastic industry tries to cover up any scandals and runs a gigantic lobbying campaign in order to prevent stricter laws or inquiries. Plastic factories are veritable fortresses. The plastic production process is a tightly kept secret. This is one of the reasons why no one is exactly sure what substances are added to the plastic. Over the course of the last 10 years, only 11 chemical substances could be analyzed out of a total of 100,000 possible additives. But there is hope yet. Intelligent robot nets, or fishing boats converted to floating recycling factories, are intended to cleanse the oceans. Bioplastic made of maize or starch could replace conventional plastic. However, its production consumes valuable food, so it's no solution for satisfying the global demand for plastic. This is why you must radically change your consumption behavior. Pay attention to the packaging of products. Substitute paper or cloth bags for plastic bags. Don't throw away old plastic, but recycle it and use plastic-free products. Are we going to allow the destruction of the earth to continue? If we act now, there may still be hope for future generations, before the miracle material definitely turns on its creator.
So obviously, plastics are a global and we need some global-sized solutions. So why focus on plastic bags? Well, plastic bags are a huge part of the problem, as Raina and I discovered when we formed a plastics subcommittee and started our research. We soon joined forces with Ellen Corpy of the town's Sustainable Energy Committee and Mike Paxtus and his team at the Department of Public Works. We formed the 3R working group to look at various waste management issues. 3R stands for reduce, reuse, and recycle, all three of the behaviors that we are hoping to encourage. Our working group set about trying to understand the issues of waste management in Wellesley from many perspectives. We began with Garbology 101, a workshop led by Gordon Martin, who heads up the recycling and disposal facility for the DPW. Gordon's presentation was a comprehensive look at the creative ways Wellesley waste is being managed to minimize our environmental impact and to minimize the cost to the town. When it came to discussing plastic bags, Gordon outlined many challenges in managing the bags responsibly and announced that the RDF had in fact just decided to stop collecting plastic bags for recycling. Henceforth, they would go straight to the landfill. Gordon explained that there was no longer much of a market for the plastic bags. To recycle them, the RDF needed to fill at least one trailer and pay $40 a ton to have them collected. The large space needed to store these unsanitary bags interfered with the flexibility needed to collect other, more valuable recyclables. Past practices also allowed some plastic bags to be mixed into bales with plastics numbers 1 through 7, but recyclers no longer want bales with bags in the mix, and the bags are simply too hard to handle. They fly around and clog the baler, which is the machine at the center of this photo, costing many hours of lost productivity while the machine is fixed. Despite the best efforts of RDF staff, the bags cannot be contained and wind up littering the RDF property and all the wetlands that surround it. The decision by the RDF gave new impetus to our research on the possibility of proposing limits on the distribution of plastic bags in Wellesley. We contacted officials in towns that had passed bag bans, officials in towns that had rejected bag bans, and officials in towns that were considering bag bans. And with the help of some great volunteers, we also reached out to the business community, conducting a survey of more than 30 local businesses about their waste management practices and whether they thought a bag ban would hurt their business. Most business owners felt that a ban would not affect them, or they had no opinion. A representative from Whole Foods also shared with us the story of that company's decision to stop offering plastic checkout bags in 2008. A decision that had no discernible impact on their business. Just last week, we also had a very helpful conversation with executive staff at Roach Brothers. Although they are concerned about the increased expense of transitioning to paper bags only, they are also deeply concerned about the local environment, and they gave us some important insights that will help us craft the final wording of our proposed bylaw. In addition to getting the business perspective, we conducted informal opinion polls at several public events in town and online. The response has been very favorable, although the polls were not scientific. The independent grassroots group Sustainable Wellesley also recently posted an online petition to support the bag ban, and more than 200 people have already signed it. As part of our research, we've been looking closely at the bans that have already passed in 18 communities in Massachusetts, including Newton and Natick. 3 more towns, Greenfield, Pittsfield, and Somerville, are all also considering bans, as is the city of Boston. Each of these bans is somewhat different from the others, and early on we realized that Wellesley's ban would also need to be tailored to our own community. On the back of our handout, if you've got one of those, you'll find some details about the features of different bag bans in Massachusetts, and there is a wide range. From bans that include all plastic bags and polystyrene or styrofoam products and all retailers, to bans that specifically target plastic shopping bags of a certain thickness distributed by large retailers only. We are still working on the final wording of our proposal. However, the folks at Roach Brothers did tell us that they feel that a ban should cover all businesses in order to be fair to everyone. Some bag bans make exceptions for certain kinds of compostable and degradable bags, biodegradable bags. But we've learned that there are problems with these bags. Compostable bags and biodegradable bags look just like petroleum-based plastic bags, so they often wind up contaminating recycling loads. And since we are not banning all plastic bags, everyone will still need to recycle produce bags, newspaper bags, dry cleaning bags, and so on, which you can still do at both Roach Brothers and Whole Foods. Most compostable and biodegradable bags also require specific conditions in order to degrade, and they may take many months to break down. Even biodegradable and photodegradable bags can do a lot of damage in the environment before they break apart. Animals can become entangled in the bags, as you see here, and animals may mistake the bags for food. The New England Aquarium points out that sea turtles and other marine animals eat floating plastic bags, mistaking the bags for sea jellies. The bags get stuck in the animal's digestive tract, resulting in death. The obvious alternative to plastic bags and their lookalikes is paper bags. Paper bags can be easily recycled, and they biodegrade quickly if they wind up as litter. But they do have a very big carbon footprint. Some bag bans discourage the use of paper bags by imposing a fee of 5 or 10 cents per bag. The Massachusetts Attorney General recently disallowed this practice among the smaller towns like ours that are under her jurisdiction. So our ban proposal will not include a fee on paper bags. The only really sustainable solution to the bag problem is reusable bags. These are readily available for little or nothing, and we are committed to long-term public outreach to convince Wellesley residents to make the switch. So what's next? We are working with Lenny Izzo, the Director of the Health Department, and Town Council on the final provisions of the bylaw. Meanwhile, our public outreach and education efforts are ongoing. On February 20th, the NRC will host a statewide summit on plastic bans at the Wellesley Free Library. The summit is free and open to the public. It's being organized by a group called Mass Green and is also co-sponsored by Toxics Action Center, Sierra Club Massachusetts, and Mass Purg. Please go to the NRC webpage for information on how to sign up. We're also making presentations to groups in town to make sure Wellesley residents hear about our proposal and have a chance to provide input and ask questions. We hope you'll sign the sheet that's circulating to indicate your support, and we ask that you please help spread the word. We will need your help in making sure that everyone in Wellesley hears about the ban and the thinking behind it. And now we would like to hear from you with your questions and comments.
If you wish to speak, please raise your hand and wait for the microphone to come, or come up to the microphone stand and state your name and address.
My name's Regina LaRock. I live at 49 Madison Road. This is my first time attending a meeting like this, and I was brought here by this initiative, which I think is essential. Ironically, a plastic bag blew across the road as I was driving here, which I thought was kind of telling. I just want to say that I really support what you're doing, and I think this is a very important effort, and I hope that the town unites behind this.
Thank you.
My name is Will Breeden, and I'm chair of the environmental ministry at the village church. My question is, what does happen to the plastic bags that are now being collected, for example, by Whole Foods and other? I mean, do they wind up being, mainstreamed, or?
So they are actually recycled, but they have to pay to have them taken away. And they have the same problem that we had at the RDF, which is they have to collect a lot of them, and they sit in containers waiting till they're enough in order to get them taken away.
So
but they do get recycled.
Technically, they are recyclable.
So all plastics technically are recyclable, yes. It's a matter of economics. And I think for Gordon Martin, the issue was that we had to pay to have them taken away, whereas in the past, we were paid for them. And because they're so light, it requires, you have to amass them over a long period of time in order to have a container full. And it was just too costly and took up too much space. Also, the biggest private waste hauler in the United States, called Waste Management, has also stopped collecting them for recycling because of this problem. There's also just very little market for it. Else?
Ooh, shocked you. Lisa,
Can you just say your name?
Sure, Phyllis Tierman. Wouldn't Roach Brothers then be interested in getting rid of that? Because they're having the same issue of storing the plastic. That's my first question. And my second question is, what can we do as citizens to maybe help your cause with Roach Brothers and other stores? Because I think, again, I agree with you that this is a very important thing, and I hope we can all rally around it, but how can we do it mindfully?
So Roach Brothers, for them it's an economic issue. The plastic bags are a lot cheaper than the paper bags. So they're looking at increased cost if they have to switch to paper bags. On the other hand, they do recognize that there's state legislation that's likely to pass eventually, not anytime soon, but eventually. And, the trend is clearly toward more and more bans. And so I would say that their concern is economic. And what can you do to, I would say, let them know that you support a ban, by all means. They did say that in Wellesley, they have a much higher percentage of customers who bring reusable bags already than they do in other stores, in other jurisdictions.
Lisa, just following up on her comment, you mentioned during your presentation that Whole Foods has felt no economic change, and
So
how do they account for that if there is an additional expense?
So I should have been a little clearer. So they didn't notice any change in their customer. In other words, they didn't lose customers as a result of the shift. Their costs definitely went up. Yeah. So it did affect their business in that sense. Good point, Joan. Yes.
My name is Stephen Beach. I'm here as a resident of Wellesley. I'm not here as the executive director of the Wellesley Community Center, nor the sales director of GXT Green of Billerica, Mass., or the account manager for Roach Brothers Corporate. I have a proposal because plastic waste streams represent a significant percentage of our household waste streams. I'm a recycling nut myself. What if, and I proposed this idea to Gordon informally years ago, we levied a user fee of $5, $6, $10, $12 a year for Wellesley residents for the little green sticker to help directors like Gordon offset the obvious costs of managing a waste stream that has become an operations headache. Spot crude futures have tumbled so badly that high-density poly has become virtually useless in the secondary market, and that's what precipitated Gordon's decision to stop accepting these as a recyclable waste stream. So I want to know if anyone has given any thought to how would that pencil to the RDF's operating budget if we levied such a user fee going forward to address a practical challenge. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a question for the DPW, definitely.
Quite.
And
And
consider-
town meeting as well, I think.
Yeah.
Can I answer that?
Please do.
My name's Owen Dugan.
Do you want to go to the mic?
I am Owen Dugan. I'm a member of the Board of Public Works. And we have talked about this off and on of having a user fee. And my personal opinion, okay, is that I would never allow that. We charge the residents of this town enough of money in their taxes, okay, that if we can't run a DPW operation under the limits of the tax, of the funding that we get, we ought not to be in business, all right? So I would not advocate for another fee on the residents of the town.
Thank you, Owen.
I'm Laura Fragasso, a resident and also president of Friends of Brookside, and that's a really interesting proposal. But for me, if I've had any communication with Gordon at the RDF, and I'm a huge fan, it has more to do with the bags flying around and escaping from the system. And so here I've traded communications about building a better rat trap, and it really does pose a challenge over there for them to actually capture the bags. So I would defer to Mr. Dugan about it not being, I don't know if that fee is good or bad, but I don't see how that solves the problem of, the bags flying into the world and affecting the habitat and all of that. So that's my concern. I'd like to just get rid of them, and I think this is a great initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. I would say that also Gordon pointed out that they just don't have the manpower to clean, to maintain the property with the bags flying around the way they do.
I would also add that, assessing a user fee to subsidize the recycling does not affect, what is coming into the system. And I think the idea behind this proposed ban is to take out this particular commodity out of the stream of commerce, the stream of disposal, and affecting not only the financial bottom line of Public Works, but the environment as a whole, and environment in Wellesley, which I think is very, very important.
Please.
I'm Wiley McCarthy. I live on Crest Road. People laugh at me because I pick up anything recyclable while I walk my dog. And it's amazing how people think that shrubs, for instance, will eat beer cans. I mean, they must believe this because they feed them all the time. So I see a lot of plastic, so this is a great idea. And my questions are, one, or maybe not a question, I encourage you to ban it for all businesses because the small businesses, which tend to have like the thicker, more luxurious plastic bags, I find even worse or more offensive than the really thin, like CVS ones. Two, is there any chance, or do you have any sense of a time frame when we might be able to charge for a paper bag, which I found highly effective last time I was in San Francisco?
Yeah.
Highly effective. And third, to branch a little off subject, but beyond paper bags, what about styrofoam? All those cups.
So all of those are really great questions. So I'll start with styrofoam. We looked at styrofoam bans. A lot of the bag bans that exist in Massachusetts already include styrofoam, or not a lot, but some. And we decided that we wanted to just start with this one thing because we felt it would frankly be a lot easier to pass. Styrofoam's kind of another layer of conversation with a different set of retailers, restaurants primarily. So we're certainly open to that idea down the road, and one of the things that'll be discussed on February 20th at that summit, the Mass Green Summit, will be styrofoam bans, and bans on other kinds of plastic too. They're plastic straws are also a real environmental problem. And then, if I can remember your other questions, charging for bags. So the Attorney General's decision, I'm not a lawyer, but I read the decision, and it had to do with the relationship between the customer and the retailer and what municipalities how municipalities can interfere with that relationship. So I don't think she's likely to change her mind on that.
I might also maybe supplement to that. I think a fee per bag system would probably be more effective if it's on a statewide basis, because one of the things you probably would see is if you have a fee per bag in one community but next door there isn't, there are going to be people who are going to migrate over to that town. Now, as a practical matter, a nickel per bag, a grocery bag, assuming it's about $25 worth of groceries, is a 0.2% assessment. My thinking is that probably is not high enough to affect behavior, except as a matter of principle. But as I say, I think a fee is probably more appropriate on a statewide level as opposed to an individual community, just in terms of effectiveness.
There are cities in Massachusetts that have them. I think Cambridge has a paper bag fee because they can do what they want. They don't have to. because
Cities are a
there's-
little bit different than towns.
And then I think your other question was about the smaller businesses with the thicker bags. So we're still deciding how to define our bag thickness, for one thing. The issue around the small versus large retailers, as I see it, is volume. So there's no question that it's the big retailers that are producing the greatest number of bags. So that's why I think most of the bans target large retailers. The state law, the current proposal for the state law does have, I think it's a 3,000 square foot limit. So, we're still mulling it over, but I appreciate your input. I mean, I would like to see them all banned also, but we're trying to figure out what makes the most sense for Wellesley retailers. Yeah. Oh.
I'm Chris Larson from Bacon Street, and I just wanted to weigh in on the user fee for residents. I think we pay a price for having the bags in our community and in our wires and trees, and I only think it's incumbent upon us who use those bags that we help pay for the termination of their use. So I'm for a user fee.
Thank you. Hi.
Thank you. My name is Michael Vannon. I'm the warden at St. Andrew's Church here in Wellesley. I'm also the Chief Operating Officer for GXT Green. And the reason that I'm here today is, A, because I've been a part of this community for the last 20 years. I share your concerns about the environment. GXT Green is an environmental company that offers solutions to exactly what you're talking about. One of the things I offer to you is the solutions that you are talking about, whether it's paper or the reusable bags. You really should be very mindful of the impact they have on the environment, not on the back end, but on the front end for producing them. A paper bag, as Lisa said, does have a bigger carbon footprint than plastic, and the reusable bags actually have a tremendous carbon footprint because of what they're made from, and eventually they have serviced their usefulness, and they do end up in the trash, and they can't be recycled. One of the things that we offer are solutions, and the one that we've talked to the committee about just yesterday was a photodegradable bag. If your main concern is the litter and seeing the bags in the trees, we have spent 7 years developing a product that if it is littered, it can be recycled, and we hope that it is, but it's stronger than a plastic bag. It's actually slightly cheaper than a plastic bag. We have 3 billion of them that are currently in circulation, and Roach Brothers has given us an order for these bags. But if in fact they are littered, the sun will degrade it so that over time it will degrade to a non-toxic substance. Those animals that may, over time, maybe eat them in a way that was demonstrated in the video. These bags, because they're made of calcium and organics, they don't stay in the digestive system, but they're actually excreted through the digestive system. So I just point out to you that I'm not here to sell anything, but just to educate. And the committee has seen our presentation, and we spent several minutes with them yesterday, and they were very gracious with their time. And so I just propose that there are solutions out there, and the solutions that are being presented do have a very substantial carbon footprint, and I hope that you are mindful of that and you make intelligent decisions about the appropriate solution. So thank you. Thank you.
That's an interesting thing. Let me just say at the outset, I should have said before, that I'm very much in favor of curtailing, if not outright banning, plastic bags. I'll get more about that later. Photodegradable bags. What happens to those that are buried? I can't believe that there are an overwhelming percentage of bags are floating around in the sunlight. Undoubtedly, the vast majority of them are buried in landfills. What happens to those in the photodegradable environment?
That's a question that we get all the time, and because our bags are not plastic, they don't degrade, or they don't get scissored into what are called microplastics, and that's not a concern. But one of the questions that we get all the time is what happens if it gets buried or it goes into the landfill. Most of what is in our bags are organics, and so over time they will actually biodegrade. They are the specific solution that we've devised them for is to be photodegradable to take care of the worldwide 4 billion bags that are littered every single year. But if they go into a landfill, they will degrade over time because of the organics, but at a slower pace than they would if they were exposed to sun.
May I just ask you, is it, what kind of substance actually are you
Yes.
using? Are you proteins or carbohydrates?
It
starches?
is, they are, the main ingredients that are the organics are calcium carbonate,
Right.
and that is actually derived from the tillings of calcium mines.
Right.
So it's a waste product that we incorporate. We also use baguettes, which is the sugarcane husks, which is a throwaway product as well. So we have some other substances that go into it, which are proprietary, and I'd like to share all that with you, but this is the lifeblood of our, and it's trademarked,
That's
yeah,
a good
and
answer.
patented.
So they compost, in other words, you could
Well,
compost.
they could compost, and they will compost, yes, but at
What
a
do they
slower
need?
pace.
Water? They need, what
Well,
do
the
they
interesting
need
thing
as a-
about
as a solution?
biodegradables is that biodegradables are impractical in the marketplace because A, the cost, and B, they only will degrade in a commercial facility. And there really
So-
only are a few of these around the country.
And you need heat and photosynthesis
Right,
to do so.
exactly right. But our bags are specifically designed to be degradable if they're littered, but they can be recycled with other materials. So it's a solution that answers lots of the questions for lots of communities. We have, as I said, we have 3 billion of these in circulation in many cities around the world that have actually banned plastic but allow our bags to be used.
So I would,
Good
yeah,
answer.
our
Thank you.
ongoing concern about that is the time it takes in the environment for these bags
Yes.
to break down. So we still have some thinking to do about that.
I think you wanted to speak, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name's Brian Houghton. I'm with the Massachusetts Food Association. We're a trade association that represents the supermarket and grocery industry on all legislative and regulatory matters in the Commonwealth. And I thank you again for the opportunity to speak. I'm not from Wellesley, but I do represent Roach Brothers and other grocers across the state. And I was hoping to, when I signed in, I didn't check off whether I support or oppose the ban because we're sort of stuck in the middle. The bans are popping up everywhere, and we're trying to work towards a statewide ban with Representative Ehrlich's office, so it's uniform across the state. The problem with some of our members are when they operate in one town that has a ban that's different from another, it causes a lot of problems for their business and commerce. But I was just hoping to mention a few things, and I have comments that I could submit to you too, so I'll just be brief. But again, the statewide ban that we've been working on, we've been working closely with Laurie Ehrlich's office. We've brought her to our board of directors meetings. We've been in constant contact. Hopefully we can get something moving on this so we can avoid going to more communities than the 18 that are out there right now with these things popping up all over the place. We feel that a ban on plastic bags is going to force people to the paper bags, probably the reusable, but if they don't have the reusables and they have to buy the paper, obviously you folks know what the problems are with the paper. The 2,000 plastic bags weigh 30 pounds, 2,000 paper bags weigh about 280 pounds, so you can imagine what it costs to transport those. And I've got some information on my testimony that I can give you for that. For those communities that have instituted a ban, a lot of instances that we've been told the customers have gone to other cities and towns surrounding the locale that does have the ban. There was a member of ours who operates in the town of Newburyport. They have a store in New Hampshire, and they lost what he said was 5 to 10% of their business in the store in Newburyport when the ban went through. Their sister store picked up 5 to 10% of the shoppers for their shopping when the ban went into effect. So they wanted to go to the same store, but they just went over the border a little further, maybe 10, 15 minutes away to do their shopping. So there is a degree and an effect when that does go into effect in a city or a town for the surrounding towns. I wanted to mention on the fee, it was turned down in Williamstown when Williamstown put it forward, but it did pass in Cambridge, and it's also going to go into effect in Falmouth in May. So there is an ability for a town, I believe, to do it legally. The AG's
cities.
ruling stated, part of it stated, it's the relationship between the public and them interfering with a contractual agreement, whether it's a lease agreement or what it may be. But if Falmouth can do it, there must be some method of having it approved. It's worked, as indicated, in San Francisco. We have members that have stores that operate down in Maryland, in Montgomery County, Washington, D.C., where they have the fees on the bag. It's about a 4 or 5 cent fee in both places. Part of that fee goes to an environmental committee that's used to clean up the rivers and the environment down there. The retailer keeps the rest of the fee, and from what they've told us, it's been a great deterrent to
Yeah,
keep
we
people
were just
away.
advised by Wellesley Town Council that we would not be permitted to have a fee. So
I'd
we'll
be
certainly
interested-
look into
yeah,
it again. We can ask him again, but that was, he was the one who directed us to the Attorney General's decision, and he looked into it, and I believe he called the Attorney General's office, and they discouraged us from considering it.
I'd be interested to find out then how Falmouth approved theirs, because it goes into effect in May. And
Well,
I think
I
there's a
know,
minimum 10
I know
cent fee.
some municipalities are not subject to the Attorney General's ruling, for whatever reason.
And I believe you stated earlier, it's because it's a city as opposed to a town.
And maybe Falmouth is big enough?
I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
I
still
don't know.
classified as a town, but I'd like to look into that too, to find out
Mm-hmm.
more as why they were able to pass it.
So there's nothing that would prevent a merchant from charging a fee? So if Roach Brothers
No.
wanted to charge 5 cents for a bag, that they would be able to do that?
But then their customers
I
who don't want
understand
to pay
that.
the 5
I
cent
understand that.
are probably lost too. And it's not a simple solution, this whole
So I would also
whole
just
issue.
like to point out that both Newton and Natick have passed bans, and we did think about that. We certainly don't want customers leaving Wellesley. Needham is considering a ban. So we felt that because these surrounding communities were either considering or had already passed bans, that we were in a pretty good position. I mean, Roach Brothers also said to us, well, can you wait until the state passes a bag ban? Because obviously that's going to be easier for everyone. But I've spoken to Lori Ehrlich myself, and there are really no prospects anytime soon for that state legislation to pass. It's not going to pass in this session. It hasn't come out of committee. So we decided that we would move forward. We have been very mindful of what that current legislation that's proposed, what it says, and trying to match up as best we can.
Yeah, and she has reached out to us, and we have been working with her, and she feels if she does have the backing of the Mass Food Association, which she does
Yeah.
for the grocery industry of the state, that's going to help strengthen her cause to get something passed. And again, we don't want to be running around to all these municipalities across the
Right.
state. And if something is uniform, it's going to put everybody on a level playing field.
I think she encouraged us to go forward, and because I think the feeling is, as happened in California, the more communities that pass bans, the greater pressure there is on the state legislature to act.
And we hope she does. Last I heard from her staff, the bill is going to be reported out favorably from the committee. Where it goes from there is a question, but
Anybody's
if we have
guess.
our support behind it, hopefully that's going to help her cause, too.
Right.
But if I could submit my comments?
Please do, and maybe give it to our director, Brandon Schmidt.
Sure.
And he can distribute it to us and to anybody else interested.
Great. All
Okay.
right. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just like to add my 2 cents here. I've lived in town for 40 years and been shopping at Roach Brothers when they were on the other side of the street years ago. I've had probably the same cloth bags to address the man about the biodegradable ones, and we do use them in town, unfortunately, as poop bags. I'm on the liaison to the Trails Committee. We have to, because unfortunately people are careless. And I carry them around in my car, and they do biodegrade. And so I go to get them out and fill the dispenser, and they turn to They break down. So I think the mindset we're trying to get here is not to have people use more paper bags, because we realize that we don't want to do that. We want to get the mindset of reuse. And I've been using the same cloth bags for probably 15, 20 years. They do not biodegrade in my car. I reuse them and they're fine. And I ring the bell for the American Legion, Salvation Army every year, and I take note, mental, I write down, like, about probably half of the people that came during the hours that I was in front of Roach Brothers, bring cloth bags. So we're trying to encourage that mindset, not to use paper, but to bring the cloth bags. And the more people that do it, the more people will get on, and the more people will. So we're trying to change our mindset. We're not trying to increase more paper. That's not our aim here. So. And maybe we do need to do a little bit more research on how to educate people not to use paper bags. So,
Ma'am?
Hi, Jessica Stanton. I live on Hampshire Road and have been involved for a long time with Wellesley Green Schools. I guess to your point, just sitting here thinking, obviously we all here I think are fairly well educated about the issues, but obviously there's always lots of discussion about, and I share the concerns about paper bags and reusable bags, and I guess what I'm thinking about is there a plan, Lisa, for the education component? How can we support you in your efforts to sort of reach out to different constituencies in the community and help educate people? I mean, I think about the video that you saw, and my immediate thought was, okay, how do I figure out how I can send that, forward that sort of thing?
Great question. So we're really lucky to have Stephanie Hawkinson, who is new to the NRC as our Educational and Environmental Outreach Coordinator. And Stephanie is full of great ideas about how to educate the public and particularly outreach to the schools. One project I want to do is, there's a really easy way to make reusable bags out of T-shirts. And with two teenage daughters, I have just an unlimited supply of T-shirts. And it's incredibly easy, and it's a much more environmentally friendly way of handling the reusable bag issue. So that's something I've thought about that we could certainly do. It's a great project to run with kids, and but we absolutely intend to do that outreach, and we're really fortunate to have Stephanie on the staff.
May I also T-shirts? You may have seen this wonderful lady in the corner next to the screen. Well, she's the creation of Laura Fragasso, who happens to be an artist. And we have towed her around for a long time, or ever since the spring. She's made of plastic bags, just in case you don't recognize her robe. The dress is made out of, I guess, a lot of bags you have collected, Laura, huh? What's the pink? A cleaner's bag? You know, it's really funny when you look at this, and it's also very dramatic. Because that mummy is not going to fall apart for about 500 years. When you think of that, it's kind of sad, isn't it?
Be in and out of fashion.
It'll be out of fashion, or in fashion again in 500 years, and maybe they all wear plastic clothes by then, so, you know. But I also want to tell you a thing that I experienced last spring in Europe. I landed in Frankfurt, and I went to a coffee shop, and I asked for a bag for a pastry. And they looked at me like I just landed from the moon. And she just handed me the pastry and the paper napkin. I had nowhere to put it except my pocketbook. There was not a paper bag available, that's at the airport, not a plastic bag available. So, of course, you know, I ate it right then and there, and I was happy. But if you wanted to bring your sandwich onto the airplane, I would have had to carry it on. And it was very amazing, because then it was a shock. I went into a grocery store once I landed in where I was going, which was to my brother. We went shopping, and they brought their own bags. and I watched it very carefully. If you do not bring your container, you better put the whole kit and caboodle into your pocketbook, because they will not give you. If you're lucky, they give you a box, but you have to go into some place behind the store to find yourself a box and take it out.
I think that's a good point,
And
Heidi.
BJ's and Costco,
It's all about
the
habit.
same system. But this was a really rather prestigious grocery store. This wasn't, wholesale. This was a grocery store. In Berlin, I had to pay the equivalent of 50 US cents to get a paper bag, again, in a grocery store. So they haven't got as much room to bury this stuff as we do in the United States. So they are rather very careful what they put into their landfills. And of course, they have to put some of the stuff into their landfills too. But they just curtail the customer. They just keep you from using the materials that are not compostable or are hard to recycle. So we cannot do this. It's a different country. We are used to splurging. And I don't want to go to Roach Brothers and have to pay 50 cents for a bag to take my groceries home. But Joan and I, we have to sort of our little surveys. When we go to Roach Brothers, we ask the checkout person, how many people bring their own bags? And she says, oh, most of them do. And that was last week. So that's Wellesley for you, maybe. But it is the fact that we do carry our own bags. Let's not be too obvious about having to do it. We have to do it. We have to do something. And even if it's painful, we have to do something. So I'm glad you're all here for this pep talk that, the NRC are good pep talkers, We believe in recycling, of course, and we started this program in 2008, and we're still at it. And thanks to Raina and Lisa, who came with complete new energy, they're carrying the ball forward. And Phyllis in the schools, and most of you have an interest in it too. We need Wellesley to go behind, and I think Roach Brothers is not the problem. I think Roach Brothers is a great store. I know some of those people. They have been very generous to the town. Not as generous as they have been to Needham, but they have been very generous. I think they see the point that we have to not carry our stuff home in the plastic bags that we have no place to put once we get home.
Yes, I just have one follow-up. The Representative Ehrlich's name was mentioned. We have consulted at the State House with both the... Microphone? Oh, sorry. Yes, I usually have a loud enough voice for everybody to hear me. Thank you. So we have been asked to collaborate with the legislators, and we know Representative Ehrlich, who actually asked us to propose language that would be included in their bill. She and Senator Ehrlich have been the authors of that ban at the state level.
You mean Eldridge, Jamie Eldridge.
I'm sorry, Jamie Eldridge, I'm sorry. You're absolutely right, my mistake. But they have asked us to supply them with language, and we have collaborated with them for many years over this issue. So I just wanted to be sure that that was on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. I think also, too, yes.
First of all, I was trying to help the gentleman in the corner get a chance to speak, so I was raising my hand for him too, in case they saw me and not him. But anyway, the suggestion I had, I know nothing about economics, but rather than buying paper bags, this is slightly low, but all right, okay, oops, okay. Instead of buying paper bags, can you hear me all right? How much would it cost to have grocery stores give out free recyclable, cloth bags? Would too many people throw them out and treat them as disposables, and they'd have to keep buying more and more?
So I think that's a problem. But Whole Foods actually told us that when they banned plastic bags in 2008, they did give away a lot of reusable bags.
Oh.
But of course, that was a corporate decision, and they decided to do it as a customer relations thing. I think for a store like Roach Brothers that's already having to bear the increased cost of moving solely to paper bags, it's not something I would want to suggest to them, that they give them
Instead
away.
of paper bags, maybe it would pay off in the long run, because people would realize they can't just throw them out, but they'd learn to bring them back, as Heidi said.
They do
Keep
offer
bringing
them for
back.
very little. I mean, you can buy them for almost nothing. I mean, I think it's under $1 anyway.
And I just want to sneak in a different subject. We were talking about bags of dog waste. What do we do about all the bags that we see that people have carefully wrapped up into plastic but left right there on the ground for somebody else to pick up?
What do we do about that? I don't know. It's all around my neighborhood too, Janet.
Well, that's why we decided to do the biodegradable bags, because unfortunately careless people were leaving them. So they will, in the air and the sunlight, and they usually are out in the air and the sunlight, unfortunately, will biodegrade. But I almost hesitate to make it public that they are biodegradable, because we want people to pick them up and put them in the trash. But, it's just
Maybe we could get the
compromise we had
newspapers
to
to
make.
use biodegradable bags on the newspapers.
I would just make a point that if we are successful in enacting a plastic bag ban in Wellesley through town meeting, it is an important step. But we also can't legislate personal behavior. I think it is critical, and that to take this even further is that we as consumers make our choices, and if you're buying 3 things, carry them out in your hands or bring your own bags or whatever, your own solution. And, in this context, paper bags are better than plastic bags. Paper bags are not the greatest thing on earth. So keep that in mind. Thanks.
Yeah.
No?
I have a habit of talking too much at meetings like this. A couple of things. I think if you haven't seen the movie Bag It, okay, I think it's in that movie that has a very effective scene of the swirling patterns of current in the Pacific. It has a name which escapes me, and the plastic bags that can be scooped up. The swirling is part of that current. All by way of saying that I believe in when we have social movements that it's worth starting somewhere. Okay, but the plastic bag as such is I think probably a smaller part of the problem, because and the Pacific is loaded with microbeads, which are whatever they are, they're coming from other industrial processes. The other thing is also that I would encourage that we, somewhere along the line, if it's technically feasible, to deal with the large quantity of trash bags. They are larger, they are fewer, no doubt, than the grocery bags, but they are larger and they're usually of thicker material. And when you go to the RDF and you look in the dumpster when you throw your trash in those compactor dumpsters, it's loaded with plastic bags. Everything in there is contained in a plastic bag. And I think in the end, that's a substantial problem as well as what we're dealing with just now.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Does anybody else wish to be heard this evening? Okay. Well, we will now conclude this public hearing. The conversation will be continuing. Again, I think it was a week from this coming Saturday at the library, the summit.
February 20th.
Okay. Pass along the word. And then sometime in late March or early April, this matter comes before town meeting, and we hope for your support. Thank you very much.